If you've ever looked at the shrimp in someone's tank and wondered, how are those colours so intense? How are those patterns so clean? And how can I achieve that in my own colonies? Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to take the first steps towards that. And that's through selective breeding, culling and line breeding to achieve certain traits and characteristics that you want in your colonies. Now, something I want to clarify before we get too far into the video is culling. And I'm more than aware that a lot of people associate killing with culling, but it doesn't have to mean that. Some breeders may choose to do this, but not all of us do. I myself certainly do not. I can't bring myself to do it. And there's no reason to end that shrimp's life purely based on the fact that it doesn't have a deep enough colour. In my case, I do keep a cull tank, and we will be looking at that later on in the video. Essentially, culling just means removing less than satisfactory shrimp in regards to pattern, colour or characteristics that you're looking for from the main colony. And the reason we do that is so that they cannot breed their less desirable genetics into the rest of the colony. And by repeating that process over time, it can actually help you to elevate the quality of the shrimp that you do keep in the colony. This is a process that I currently use in all of my tanks across my shrimp colonies. Some of my colonies are already at a fairly high grade, but could always be improved, and it's still important to regularly follow this process to maintain that. The first tank that we are going to cull will be the green jades. Green jades are a type of Neocaridina dividi. There is a little bit of variation naturally amongst the colours that you get from green jades, and sometimes even some of the younger ones can look a little blue at first before their colours come in. And you will also find, well, I have found with green jades that compared to some of the other colours of Neocaridina, it can take a little bit longer for their pigment to come in. Typically, I tend to let the shrimp in this tank and this colony get a little bit bigger before I start to select them. Now, I'm sure you're also wondering how on earth are we going to get all of the shrimp out to figure out which ones need culling and so that we can see all of them. And the truth is, we probably won't see all of the ones that we need to cull on a single visit to the tank. And when you're trying to maintain a good colour, a nice deep colour, or a certain characteristic in a tank of shrimp, it's important that you set aside a little bit of time once a week to cull that tank. Depending on the size of your colony, it might be a little bit more spread out than that. But taking even 10 minutes a week rather than an hour once a month will do you more favours, because you will get those shrimp out when they are at a certain size before they've reached maturity and they've not been able to spread their genetics when they breed. Now, to make sure that we can get as many on view as possible, I always find, in my experience, the best thing to do is to feed them. We'll let the shrimp gather around that bit of food that I've just popped in. Once they're all on display, or as many of them as possible have come out from hiding, we'll pop back and we will start taking out those that don't fit the standards of this colony. What I am looking for in the shrimp that I want to remove are things like inconsistent colour across the shell, or hints that they might be maybe more wild type coloration or pattern. And we can see one right here just below the net, so I will get that one into the net and show you the difference. Now, as you can see, that shrimp does not have solid colour throughout the rear section of its body. It's quite translucent, and it's going to, if we leave it in there, bring the quality of the rest of the colony down. So there's nothing wrong with the shrimp, it's just not what we're looking to keep in that colony, and it will not help us to achieve what we're trying to achieve. It's also important to note that this is not a process that can happen overnight. To achieve a truly high quality colony of shrimp, you can sometimes be looking at working on that colony for months, maybe even years, to get to where you want it to be. And depending on your goal for that colony, Perhaps you're looking for just pure colour intensity. Perhaps you're trying to crossbreed some Caridina strains like pandas and blue bulks to achieve shadow pandas like we are in this tank here. Perhaps you're just trying to enhance a pattern that you see like that of a boa. They will all have a slightly different process, but the fundamentals are the same. In my opinion, this is one of the most important parts of this process, and that is allowing your colony to grow first. When you first get your colony, you want to allow them to breed and to multiply and have a good, decent size before you start playing around with them. If you start culling too early on, trying to line breed, you might actually end up slowing the whole process down for yourself and making it last even longer. It will always be much easier for you to get breeding from a larger group of shrimp than a smaller group of shrimp, and naturally that will always make the process faster. So breed your colony first, let those numbers absolutely explode, and then begin to be selective. Equally, with every shrimp that is born, there is the chance of a mutation, a different characteristic or trait presenting itself in each shrimp that you may actually want to refine and create a line based off of that. So the more shrimp you can breed initially, the more choice and options you've got in the way that you want to refine that group or that colony. And that brings us really nicely into the next point. What are we selecting for? What are we trying to achieve? What is the direction that we want to take this colony in? And it comes down to a little bit more than just about the transparency or amount of colour on the shell. Primarily, initially, that is what most people will go for to begin with. Just trying to make sure that all of their shrimp are as colourful as possible. But that's when it begins to go deeper than that. Do I want a slightly lighter shade of red than this? Do I want a slightly deeper shade of green than this? When we look at Caridinas, do I want the shape of the fishbone to extend further down the sides of the body? Do I want there to be more breaks in it? There are many, many things that you can focus on to change the direction of your shrimp colony. Here's another point that I think is fairly important to remember, and it's something that I've heard breeders run into issues with in the past, and I myself have definitely noticed the effect this can have on a colony too. Typically, males do tend to be a little less colourful than females, and if you don't pay close attention, it can be really easy to just end up removing all your males, or a big number of them. If you take too many males out, or all of them out, your colony's going to struggle to breed, if breed at all. So when it comes to males, I try to be a little bit more forgiving. They may not always be the best coloured shrimp in the tank, but they will still carry good genetics and be able to help you expand that colony over time. Now, when it comes to you wanting to take on your own line breeding project to try and achieve the highest grade possible from a colony, I would always recommend starting with a group of Neos first. And that's just because there's less things that you need to select for. With most Neocaridinas, it typically tends to be colour. For example, these painted fire reds, you would just be selecting the purest red shrimp with nice texture on the shell. Really simple. Anything that has any transparent parts, no colour in the legs, you would remove from the colony to ensure that you retain that high grade colour and shell coverage. I personally don't keep any Rilly shrimp, but if you were looking for something that maybe was a little bit of a step up from your traditional Neos, you could choose Rillies. For anyone that doesn't know what Rillies are, I don't unfortunately have any to show you, but they are Neocaridina shrimp that have a clear midsection. Some people say that they look a little bit like candy canes. Maintaining the Rilly pattern in a colony may be slightly more rewarding and challenging than keeping just a pure colour colony, and that could be an ideal next step once you're happy with your first project. You may even choose to start at Rilly. Everyone has a personal preference. Some may even start straight with Caridina. Whereas with your Caridinas, especially the variations like Boas, Galaxy Fishbones, Stardust, Snowflakes, whatever they are known as in your part of the world, there's just so much more that you need to focus on. So you will be looking at things like cheek pattern, You will be looking at shell thickness, you will be looking at color, you will be looking in some variations for metallic color. You will also be looking at the personal preference for how you want your colony to look in terms of pattern. Some boa breeders like to have the back piece stretch really far down the sides and have a minimal area of black along the bottom. Whereas some breeders will go for a higher back piece and have more areas of black. Some may go for a straighter look, some may go for a more jagged look. And what I'll do is I'll quickly get what I would consider a boa cull into a little isolation tank so we can compare that to what I would class as a high grade. This is our little isolation tank for when we do auctions alongside Shrimp Cove. So this is courtesy of Tim. Thank you, Tim, I do really like this one. Now, this boa in here is a female, and it's actually a really nice shrimp, and it does have some very nice characteristics, but it also has some characteristics that I didn't want it to pass on to the rest of the colony. So as you can see, it does actually have quite good color. It's got that blue genetic that is quite sought after in boas. When we look at the cheek pattern of this shrimp, we can see that there's not a great deal of coverage. It is a little bit spread out. And in boas, ideally, you want them to be very full. Something that is worth looking out for in your colonies as well, if you keep boas, is the number 7. If you see a 7 in the pattern of the cheek, that is always a sign of good genetics. Something else this shrimp has that's really nice is called spider legs, and that is where the color alternates on the legs. Unfortunately, this shrimp does also have a slight black bar at the end of its tail, and the pattern doesn't join up on top of the head to be one continuous line. And for those reasons, this one doesn't make the cut and it goes into our cull tank. This male boa is a prime example of what I seek to keep in the colony and continue breeding. It has lovely full cheeks. It has that complete back piece that runs from head to tail. It's also got those lovely spider legs that we spoke about before, and the presence of that blue genetic too. This shrimp, on a good day, does actually show up much more metallic than this. The unfortunate thing about metallic shrimp is that they don't always look the way that you see them in pictures and in videos every single day. I'm going to pop this guy back in the main tank, but that's a good example of something that we're looking for. And if you look just there on his cheek, you can see the number 7. Not all Caridina have this exact number of different things to look out for. Some are easier than others. These guys here are blue steels. These typically tend to be a little bit easier to line breed and cull from. And I would say a lot of the time it's just more about personal preference for these. Some people prefer to keep their colonies with a good split between the white and the blue, resembling that of an original blue bolt. Others like them to be really blue. Now this colony, for me at the moment, is super exciting, and there will be a future video in series coming out on these guys where we will line breed and cull them week by week, because Shrimp Cove supplied us with a lovely pair of males that have the orange eye genetics, and they are actually presenting the orange eyes too. So that will be something fun for the channel that we can watch happen over time, where we try and adjust the genetic pool of this colony to give us more orange eye shrimp over time, and hopefully stabilize that into the colony so that's all we get going forwards. Big shout out to Tim and Sarah at Shrimp Cove for helping us out with those. I do massively appreciate it, and I can't wait for us to properly start this project. When it comes to the shrimp that you remove from your colonies, there are plenty of options of things that you can do with them. Depending on what they are culls of, you may be able to sell them, and that could be privately to other hobbyists. That could be trading them in to your local fish store for a bit of store credit, which helps you fund your hobby. When it comes to Caridinas especially, you may actually find that where you are so strict with your culling, because you're trying to achieve something very particular or something extremely high grade, that your culls are not necessarily a low grade themselves. They just don't possess the exact characteristics you're looking for. And they could still be medium to high grade easily. And even if they are lower grade, there are people out there who would happily take lower grade shrimp and use them as either a project to start off their own line, to add extra genetics and strengthen a line they already have, or just because they don't mind what the lower quality looks like. The last point I think I need to make is that over time, your colony will be breeding within the limits of its own gene pool. Eventually, over time, your shrimp could become a little bit inbred because they are all related in that tank. It is always best practice at some point, maybe after a year or so, it all depends on the size of the colony, how often they breed. It's a good idea to get the same shrimp, but from a different breeder, to introduce new blood into the colony. This can help prevent issues like short skirting, where the shell of the shrimp doesn't reach all the way down on the cheeks. It can also prevent health issues appearing in your colony too. That pretty much brings us to the end of this video. I hope I've been able to give you a basic outline of how to line breed and cull to get the best out of your shrimp colonies. I'm aware that we didn't go too much in depth into genetics and grading, and that's something that I will look to do in a future video. So if there are any Caridina species or variations that you would like the grading to be looked at more in depth, then please leave it in the comments. And don't forget to follow along for our Orange Eye Blue Steel project, which will be an ongoing project. Filming's begun now, but it's something that's going to be a bit of a longer process. In that video, we will look more into the genetics of shrimp and how we can give ourselves the best chance to carry over that orange eye genetics into future generations. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.